It was a bustling evening at a popular restaurant, and all seemed normal, until an uncomfortable scene began to unfold. A young black woman entered, dressed casually yet confidently, looking for a table. However, instead of being greeted with warmth, she was met with cold stares and judgment. The waiter, visibly annoyed, approached her with an attitude that hinted at more than just standard policy enforcement. Moments later, she was asked to leave. No explanation, no apology, just outright dismissal. Patrons looked on, some in discomfort, others indifferent, as she calmly gathered her belongings and headed for the door. What no one, especially the waiter, could have guessed was the twist that would change everything. Because the woman they just rejected wasn't just another customer, she was the owner of the entire franchise. Stay tuned to find out how she handled this shocking moment and the powerful message she delivered. As the woman stepped outside, her calm demeanor hid a storm of emotions. This wasn't the first time she had encountered such treatment, but it was personal this time. This restaurant was part of a chain she had worked tirelessly to build. She had started as a server herself years ago, climbing the ladder with grit and determination, eventually becoming the owner of several locations. Her heart ached as she thought of the values she had instilled in her team, values of respect, inclusivity, and kindness. How could something like this happen under her watch? Meanwhile, inside, the waiter returned to his duties, unaware that his actions would soon have serious consequences. Some customers whispered among themselves, sensing that the scene wasn't quite over. The woman took a deep breath, made a quick phone call, and walked back inside with purpose. What she would say next would leave everyone in the room speechless. As she walked back through the restaurant doors, the room seemed to shift. Conversations paused, and the faint clinking of silverware slowed as eyes followed her. The waiter noticed her return and, with a mix of irritation and confusion, approached her again. Before he could say a word, she calmly introduced herself, not as a customer, but as the franchise owner. The silence was deafening. The manager hurried over, his face pale as he realized the gravity of the situation. The woman explained what had just happened, her voice steady but firm. She wasn't angry, at least, not outwardly, but the disappointment in her tone was clear. The waiter stood frozen, his earlier confidence replaced by visible regret. As the conversation unfolded, the staff began to piece together the larger story. The regular customers, too, watched intently, their curiosity growing. What would she do next? No one dared to guess. The air in the restaurant was thick with tension. The waiter, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to defend himself. He stumbled through excuses, mentioning policy and claiming he was just doing his job. But the woman stood her ground, her expression calm but commanding. She didn't need to raise her voice to make everyone feel the weight of her words. She turned to the manager and asked a pointed question. Is this the kind of experience we want to create for our customers? The manager fumbled for a response, realizing there was no justification that would suffice. The employees and customers looked on, some clearly uncomfortable, others captivated by what was unfolding. The woman then addressed the room, sharing a brief but powerful story of how she built her franchise from the ground up, ensuring it represented fairness and respect. Her voice carried strength, and her presence demanded attention. What she would say next was what everyone waited for with bated breath. Would she fire the waiter? Call out the manager? The tension was at its peak, and no one could look away. Just as it seemed the tension couldn't rise any higher, the woman paused and scanned the room. She noticed something. A few faces in the crowd weren't unfamiliar. Sitting quietly at a corner table was a longtime employee she had trained years ago, now dining with their family. Their expression was a mix of shock and recognition. The woman smiled briefly, then turned back to the waiter and manager, her tone shifting slightly. "What's truly disappointing," she said, "is that this isn't just about me. It's about every customer who's walked in here and felt they didn't belong. And I refuse to let that happen in my restaurants." Her words struck a chord, rippling through the room. Then came the twist. She revealed that a secret customer service audit had been planned for this location, a routine check she conducted across her franchises. The results of that visit, combined with today's events, would determine the staff's future. A murmur spread across the restaurant. Suddenly, this wasn't just a confrontation. It was a test with everything on the line. The stakes had never been higher. The entire restaurant held its breath as the woman looked directly at the manager and then at the waiter, her words measured and deliberate. She explained that the results of the service audit, combined with what had just happened, would force her to make some tough decisions. Turning to the manager, she asked how often training sessions were held for the staff. The silence that followed was louder than any excuse. The manager stammered, revealing that it had been far too long. Then, addressing the waiter, she asked, "If I walked in here dressed differently, would you have treated me the same?" The question hung heavy in the air. The waiter, now pale and visibly shaken, couldn't meet her gaze. Finally, she announced her decision. The manager and waiter would not lose their jobs, but only if they committed to an intensive training program focused on respect and inclusion. This wasn't about punishment, she explained. It was about ensuring no one else experienced what she had. The entire staff would be retrained, and she would personally oversee the process. Just as everyone thought the story was over, she dropped the final twist. The longtime employee dining in the corner. She offered them a promotion to oversee the changes at this location, a testament to how true leadership and character could make all the difference. The room erupted in quiet applause, and the woman walked out, leaving behind a restaurant forever changed. As the woman stepped out of the restaurant for the final time that evening, a quiet sense of accomplishment washed over her. She had turned what could have been just another frustrating encounter into a moment of growth for her staff, her customers, and the business she had built from the ground up. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The staff began to realize the importance of their actions, not just for their jobs, but for the values they represented every day. The newly promoted employees smiled at their family, excitement and pride shining in their eyes. The waiter, humbled but determined, quietly vowed to do better. And the customers who had witnessed it all left with a story they would never forget. A powerful reminder that true leadership isn't about status, but about inspiring change. Sometimes the most unexpected moments create opportunities to redefine what really matters. And tonight, that's exactly what she had done.